Plotting points on a coordinate graph or coordinate grid, so we've done it. Now we're just going to summarize some of what we've learned here. So to find x, y, you can start at 0, 0, which if you recall we called it the origin. It's where it all begins. You start there. Then you've got to run left or right before you jump up or down. Some people said you have to walk to the elevator before you can go up or down. Some people have to crawl before you stand. I just always go over, then up, over, then down, over. So my over just let me know that I'm going over left or right. So whatever works to help you remember the order. So for this one, we're going to plot point A at 2, 8. So over 2, then up 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Remember, you get to plot a dot there, and you have to label it. If they've given you a letter, you put the letter on there. If they just gave you the coordinates, you typically put the coordinates on, except for our connected dot, make a picture type things. Then we get way too messy. Plot point B at 2, -8 means we go over 2, down 8. To make it, I'm debating whether we should change that. For now, we'll leave it. Over 2, down 8. Because when we find the distance, it's not always going to be that it's the same on either side. But anyway, so there's point B, over 2, down 8. These are called reflections of each other, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow. They're reflected over the x-axis. It's the mirror image on one side. But on our notes, what we want is the distance of line segment AB. So you could sit there and count 1, 2, 3, 4, and how many units it would take to get from one point to the other. But what's the other strategy? To find the distance from point A to point B or vice versa. Yes, sir?
Using absolute value to see how far away they are from 0.
Yeah, so use the absolute value to see how far away they are from the axis. And just generalize axis because it could be that they're on either side of the x, and it could be that they're on either side of the y-axis. As long as one of the coordinates is the same, you're basically finding the difference of their other coordinate. So in this case, the 2's, the x-axis were the same, so we're going to find the difference of the 8 and the -8. So we have 8 going up and 8 going down. So what is the distance of line segment AB? Yes, ma'am. 16 units. Another thing that we talked about and noticed, and now I need to stretch this out a little bit more, I think, if I can. Yes. Was that it makes these different sections when you have your vertical and your horizontal number lines. And often in data analysis, we only plot points using ordered pairs. I don't want to just look at my sheet. Ordered pairs or coordinate pairs with a positive x coordinate and a positive y coordinate. And that's up in quadrant 1. So quadrant 1 is the first quadrant you typically start working in. So that's why I find it somewhat easy to remember quadrant 1. That first one you start working with, everything's positive. But to identify the other quadrants, you have to increase your Roman numeral as you go counterclockwise. So you have to use Roman numerals, and you have to go counterclockwise as you're figuring out which quadrant is what. So that means over here, we have quadrant 2. Down here, we have quadrant 3.
Should we write the numbers?
Yep, you should be filling it in. And then down over here, we're going to have quadrant 4. So you do need to know how to identify where a point is anywhere inside that coordinate grid. Whether it's in one of those quadrants, or it could be on the x-axis, or it could be on the y-axis. So you want to also make sure you remember the x is the one that goes across back and forth, left and right. The y is the vertical one that goes up and down. Which one time a student taught me you could remember it because it's the one that you could make a very long tail on the Y. Whoop, keeps going down. I was like, yeah, okay, that might help. So knowing your quadrants and knowing your axes, you should be able to identify where a point is falling on the coordinate grid. And then just a little summary about the movements within your coordinates. So if the x-coordinate is negative, so that's the new component of it this year for some, that's when you're going to go left instead of going right. If the y-coordinate is negative, that's when you're going to make sure you go down instead of going up. So with that in mind, in what quadrant would we find point 1, -5? Yes, ma'am?
Quadrant 4.
Quadrant 4. Our x-coordinate was positive, so we go over to the right. And then our y-coordinate was negative, so then we go down. Let me pause that. So over 1, down 5, and if you're going to plot it, no, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, don't forget you have to label it. But that's down there in quadrant 4. And what about if you wanted to plot -5, 1? Where would that end up falling? -5, 1. Yes?
Quadrant 2.
Quadrant 2. So you can go over to the left 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up 1. -5, 1 falls in quadrant 2. So that's a lot of the information you need to know when you have negative coordinates.